Ryan Zinke. Didn't know where you were coming from. Really honored to have you here.
Nice to be here. People ask me what was easier, being a commander at SEAL Team 6 or a secretary. And actually, I think being a SEAL is easier. Because when people shot at you as a SEAL, you could shoot back. Like energy. President outlined energy dominance, and for the record, we're all the above. People ask me also, why is energy so important? One, environmentally, I can guarantee you it is better to produce energy in this country under reasonable regulation than watch it get produced overseas with no regulation. And if you don't believe me, I'll take you on a tour of some places I've seen in Africa and the Middle East where their production of energy is an environmental hazard. Secondly, economy. We have to have clean, reliable, abundant, affordable fuels to drive this economy. And we're watching a rebirth in some of our technologies. In some cases, wind is an exciting off the East Coast. But commodity prices for steel are about the same as what they are in Pittsburgh and South Korea. Labor costs, we can't compete with China for labor costs, nor do we want to. And a lot of it was driving the rebirth of manufacturing in this country is our ability to provide energy at a low cost point. So it is driving the economy. And all of a sudden we're globally competitive in manufacturing. And some of it is our innovation. No one's more innovative than the U.S., but a lot of it has to do with our energy portfolio. And lastly, morally. I was a SEAL. I'm also a father. I told my daughter, by the way, two things: don't join the Navy and don't marry a Navy SEAL. She did both. But there's a lot of reasons, I suppose, to fight overseas. But to send our troops overseas to fight for energy, I think is morally wrong. I never want to see your kids ever have to deploy overseas. And I certainly don't want our country being held hostage for energy. So to me, it's personal. We're in a position now, a lot of the news about oil and gas. Yep, we're the largest producer of oil and gas on the planet. We outpaced Russia last quarter. First time in 60 years, we're exporting liquid natural gas off the East Coast. We are in the process of delivering the largest offshore wind lease in the history of this country. Same with solar, and we're all the above. All the above. I just don't ever want to be in a position where this country and you are held hostage for energy. And you look at what's happening overseas with Russia and certainly Iran. How do you put pressure on Russia or Iran? Well, there's two ways. You can do it militarily. If you want to go to war in the Middle East with Iran, that's going to be a very difficult proposition. Or you can leverage our ability to subplant energy, whether it's liquid natural gas, whether it's wind, and subplant their ability to move fuels. And we have the Navy certainly to do that. No one's stronger than we are in the United States Navy. We can do all sorts of things that no other country, no other coalition can do. But also the energy side of it with Russia as well. We could subplant Russia's continuing rise in liquid natural gas and certainly their fuels. And you wonder why Russia is in the Middle East as much as they are. I don't think they have a historical cultural tie as much as I believe probably what they're doing is they're trying to broker Iranian fuels to the southern belly of Europe as they are to the Balkans and the Eastern Europe, all the way into now the proposed pipeline into Russia. So energy is incredibly important. I look at the future of probably 5, 10, 15 years out. What I'm seeing is the East Coast in particular, the West Coast, their portfolios are primarily driven by the state legislatures, are more renewable fuels. If you're Massachusetts, you don't have a lot of space to put large wind farms onshore or large solar cells onshore, so they're looking more towards offshore. With wind, we're seeing a lot of resistance along the coastline. Wind's great, but you have to look at it. And there's a lot of angst about wind farms where you have to look at it. So we're looking at wind farms that are further out. As we look at that, the towers and the turbines are also getting taller and bigger. So now you're out at about 22, and I would imagine we'll probably be at 30 miles off the coast very shortly. Some of the challenges with wind, we have a great fishing industry that's important. And there's some concern as we put the wind farm and turbines up that we listen and we look at the best science to make sure the wind farm configuration, we learn from previous configurations and make sure. Yeah. You know, really, that's so inappropriate. You know, it is. Please sit down. You know, the nice thing about debate in our country, the nice thing about debate is that it's never nice to be rude.
I'm sorry, this is about Clean Energy Week, but there are other forms to this. Thank you.
You know, it's amazing in our country now. And look, you know, I'm a kid who grew up in Montana, and I'm not really hard over left or right politically. But the debate in our country, I mean, when people can't have a conversation or a debate, but when you can't, well, this is, you know, we as Americans, we got to wrestle with this. Because the strength of our country has been diversity of thought, debate, and coming together a conclusion where all of us can benefit as a country. But when you have the anger and this lack of civility, what happens is oftentimes then decisions don't get made, and we don't move forward as a country. So I think we're going to figure this out. But, you know, I work for the president. The president is, in some quarters, not liked. Some people get really angry when they talk about the president. And I'll tell you this, is he's pretty easy to figure out. You look at, in the White House, he's got a big board, and it's a whiteboard. And someone went to the trouble of every speech he made in the campaign to write down a campaign promise. And on the board, he crosses them out. He doesn't. So he has someone cross them out when he makes a campaign promise. When he's working on one, he'll circle it. And then what happens is he goes to the executive orders. And the executive orders are a reflection of what needs to happen in order to meet one of the campaign promises. Energy dominance is one of them. And how the executive orders go is that all the cabinet members that have a play get to see it. And we make comments on it, we put it together, say this is what Interior can do, this is what Energy can do, this is what the different compartments, Commerce can do on energy. And then we sign it up, send it to the White House, the president signs it, and then he holds you accountable to it. At the end of the day, the president's just a straight business guy. And he'll call you at 2 o'clock in the morning if don't have the numbers. I've never seen anyone work harder or have as much energy as the president. But that's how the president, as a manager, operates. So lastly is this. I think looking forward, what I see is the portfolios of renewable energy is expanding. I see probably what we're seeing offshore oil and gas. One is we had a couple leases, the largest leases in the history of this country, and offshore. And it was interesting to watch what happened. Is that about 2% of the millions of acres were bid upon. The bid price was decent, But those who bid on it were larger companies, and they were consolidating their assets, because offshore really need three things. You need, one, you need resource. Two, you need infrastructure. And you need a willing partner or community. The offshore oil and gas industry probably will remain steady and then begin to decline. It is more expensive to produce energy offshore, and it's riskier. BP paid $1 billion or $100 billion for that oil spill. And we're running things like spot inspections, surprise inspections. And our regulatory framework looks at innovation, but we hold them accountable. And what we're seeing is investments really onshore. You look at the last one with New Mexico, $1 billion in lease moving onshore, particularly strong on gas. And we're looking at some interesting technology in solar. The solar fields of 5 years ago are much different than the solar fields today, just in efficiency. And there's some interesting breakthroughs that we're probably going to be in the 70% efficiency pretty soon on solar. And I've always said, I think I said it last year, I've always said about solar, I think the best place for solar is probably on the roof of a house or a building. Because when you fly over or let's say Las Vegas, just an enormous amount of square footage and square acreage of unused available solar. Some of the solar fields on public lands, they begin to become single use. Because we're going to put a solar field up, that's area you're not going to be able to recreate on. Habitat is going to be at risk. And some of these solar fields that are proposed in California at 500 square miles, that's 500 square miles you're not going to recreate in. It's going to be tough on the habitat. And those scales, while they produce a lot of power, they also have a downside too. So I want to thank you for what you do. Clean energy is where we're all striving to be. And in many ways, you're the cutting edge of a lot of technology. But I want to thank you because you kind of represent the innovation of America in many ways, and you should give yourself a hand that you are leading this nation and contributing for us to be energy dominant, energy independent, and never be held hostage again by foreign entities. Thank you.
Now I got to go to work.